Today we're looking at electric motorbikes. So last week I came across this comment: electric bikes have no soul. And honestly, I hear that one all the time. But if there's one thing I can tell you as an EV rider myself, it's that most people saying that have never actually ridden one. Because the instant torque, effortless acceleration, and pure simplicity of these machines create an experience unlike anything else on two wheels. So today, I'm breaking down the electric motorbikes that are proving freedom doesn't need a gas tank. Let's dive in. What if your electric bike made people do a double take and actually think it was a motorcycle? That's exactly what Canada's Lyric Cycles pulled off with the Voodoo. At first glance, this thing looks like a full-sized electric moto. Beefy tires, a chunky headlight, low clip-on style handlebars, bar-in mirrors, flat two-up seat. It's got serious cafe racer energy. And it's only when you look closely that you catch the sly pedals tucked underneath, quietly revealing it's technically still a bicycle. But here's where it gets interesting. A 3-kilowatt hub motor pushes this thing to 65 miles per hour with 65 miles of range, numbers that make most city commutes stress-free. Toss in regenerative braking, a color display, USB charging, and DOT-approved everything, and it's fully street legal right out of the box. Oh, and those pedals? Swap them for foot pegs and suddenly it stops pretending entirely. All of that starts at $6,999, which, for something that turns heads like a motorcycle without the insurance costs of one, is kind of a wild deal. Its name translates to thundercloud from an ancient Norse dialect, and that tells you everything about what Cake was going for here. The Bukk is Swedish minimalism turned dirt bike. No clutter, no excess, just a razor-sharp electric motocross machine built for people who know their way around a trail. And while 21 horsepower sounds modest on paper, out on broken terrain with zero lag off the throttle, it's more than enough to get you into serious trouble. Speaking of which, suspension. You're choosing between setups from Formula, WP, or Öhlins, which are the same names you'd find on proper race bikes. That's not a coincidence. But here's the part that quietly makes this thing brilliant. A phone app lets you tune throttle response, traction control, and regen braking exactly to your riding style. Your bike, your settings, your dirt. This one starts around $15,000 fully configured. 321 foot-pounds of torque on a 250-pound bike. Let that sink in for a second. That's the Land District ADV from Cleveland-based Land Moto, and it's one of the more interesting things happening in electric off-roading right now. The whole philosophy here is simple: lightweight, American-made, and actually built to get dirty. 9 inches of ground clearance, tubeless knobby tires, and 7.5 inches of front suspension travel mean logs and loose rock are an annoyance, not a wall. And because it only weighs 250 pounds, recovering from a mistake mid-trail is way less dramatic than it would be on a heavier adventure bike. The 4.8 kilowatt-hour battery claims up to 110 miles. And off-road, where you're rarely covering highway distances, that's actually plenty useful. But here's the bit that quietly stands out. It has reverse on a trail bike. Anyone who's ever had to wrestle a moto backwards uphill knows exactly why that matters. Prices start at $11,200. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. From a Harley. Sort of. The Livewire S2 Del Mar is what happens when an iconic brand spins out a dedicated electric division and actually commits. At $15,499, it's finally in range for real consideration. 84 horsepower and 194 foot-pounds of torque on a 436-pound bike. Through city streets, that's what real freedom looks like. 4 ride modes plus a custom setting let you go from sensible commuter to something your license probably can't afford, depending on your mood. The electronics are proper too. Cornering ABS, traction control, and a drag torque slip control system that manages rear wheel behavior under regen braking. That's track-level thinking on a street bike. But the detail that stood out especially for me were the OTA updates. This bike improves sitting in your garage, same as your phone. Companion app adds navigation, ride history, and roadside assistance on top. 113 miles city range. Brembo brakes. I could go on and on. Imagine if the motor was the wheel. Not connected to it, not driving it, actually was it. That's the Verge TS Pro from Finland, and that hubless rear rim motor is probably one of the wildest engineering decisions in motorcycling right now. Because moving the motor into the wheel frees up the frame to sit the 20 kilowatt-hour battery low and central, which is exactly where you want that weight. The numbers are properly ridiculous. 738 foot-pounds of torque, 135 horsepower, Öhlins suspension at both ends, Brembo brakes, and a large TFT display that handles ride modes, torque mapping, OTA updates, and that sort of stuff. There are 4 ride modes, including one called Beast. You can probably guess what that does. Claimed range is 217 miles, and with aggressive regen, the battery actually gains charge downhill. For city riding, that's super useful, although it's not super cheap at $29,900. But nothing that reinvents the wheel ever really is. A neo-retro scrambler from Vietnam, with Öhlins suspension and Brembo brakes for under $8,000. Yeah, that got my attention too. Meet the Nuen Moto N1S out of Ho Chi Minh City. And before you scroll past, this thing is already shipping. The motor pushes 24 kilowatts with 190 newton meters of torque, good for an 81 miles per hour top speed. City range sits at 124 miles, stretching to 152 if you ride sensibly and let the regen do its thing. DC fast charging hits 80% in just 45 minutes. Dual sport tires, aluminum frame, 2-channel ABS, cruise control, reverse gear. It's genuinely well-spec'd for the price. But here's the detail that actually caught me off guard. The entire bike, battery included, is rated IP67 waterproof. That's basically half a meter of water for 30 minutes. So gravel, sand, river crossings, apparently not a problem. So if you really think about it, at around $7,000 to $8,000, that's remarkable value. True freedom isn't just about the open road, it's about never being stopped by what's on it. The Avvenire Combat from Canada looks straightforward enough. Fat, all-terrain tires, chunky frame, USD forks, monoshocks. So it can pretty much handle mud, dirt, and city streets easily. But here's where it gets interesting. When winter shows up, this thing literally transforms. Swap the front wheel for a ski, replace the rear with a snowmobile track, and suddenly you're riding terrain most bikes wouldn't survive. And if the snow's light, run the ski up front with the tire still out back. 3 completely different machines from one bike. The 5 kilowatt motor won't win drag races at 37 miles per hour, but that's not the point. The removable 3.6 kilowatt hour battery charges indoors while the bike waits outside. That's what I call practical thinking for a machine built around all-season riding. No other electric moto on this list crosses seasons like this. Here's the price for this sucker, $7,999. Belgium isn't exactly the first place you'd expect a proper electric scrambler to come from, but here we are. The Trevor Motorcycles DTRe Vince is a street-legal scrambler built in collaboration with Alain Maris Racing, and it's clearly made by people who actually ride. Wide handlebars, upright seating, lightweight 266-pound frame. Everything about it says throw it into traffic, then throw it down a trail on the way home. Peak power hits 22 kilowatts, so city acceleration is properly punchy. The 5 kilowatt-hour battery delivers around 60 real-world miles, charging fully in just 2 hours, which for a scrambler doing daily urban duty is genuinely practical. But the detail that quietly elevates the whole experience is of course a Gates carbon belt drive instead of a chain. Smoother, quieter, and zero maintenance. Who doesn't love that? At around $8,800, this baby is some solid value. If the apocalypse had a house bike, this would be it. The Droog Moto E-Fighter V2 out of Washington is what happens when someone looks at a Zero and thinks, yeah, but let's make it more threatening. Chopped tail, angular metal tank, blacked out solid rims, and a headlight hidden behind the forks behind a race plate with LED slash cuts through it. It's deliberately brutal, and it absolutely works as a street presence. Underneath the attitude is a solid foundation. 46 horsepower, 78 foot-pounds of torque, 98 miles per hour top speed, and up to 89 miles of city range. Adjusted suspension, Brembo master cylinder, and custom everything rounded out. Here's the thing though. All of that is built on an $11,000 Zero S donor bike. Droog's craftsmanship and custom metalwork are genuinely impressive, but at $40,000 base, you're paying almost $29,000 purely for the look. Whether that's worth it depends entirely on how badly you want to be the most intimidating thing at the traffic light. And that's a wrap, folks. Motorbikes that offer ultimate freedom. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss what we cover next. See you in the next one.